Hello there, is that you, Alan? The Simpsons fan 101? Is that Alan from Twitter? Is If it is you, you've arrived just in time, hoping more people show up tonight. Yep. So, yeah, how are you, Alan? So, welcome to the stream, everybody. Hold on a second. Let me just get a little posting done before I start. Okay, so, yeah. Thankfully, I am recovering from my cold, so I don't sound as bad, or I don't cough nearly as much, or have as bad a runny nose. I mean, as Gordon Ramsay would say, my nose was running as fast as Mo Farah. But yeah, so here we are. What's up, everybody? Blood Moon Bobby here, celebrating. Even though I'm a day late, but unfortunately, yesterday I was busy with something. Here to celebrate Nintendo's 130th anniversary. When people found out, it's interesting. Alan, did you actually know Nintendo was founded in 1889? Like, I'm just wondering for people who may have not known that fact. Are you surprised that they've been around so long? I think especially because we often associate Nintendo with being the the video game company. It's like I'm wondering if there's people out there when they find out that fact, or they're like, whoa, actually Nintendo's been around that long, even before video games. So yes, they have. Alan says yes. Yes, you knew that, and yeah, that's because Nintendo started off as basically a playing card company. They got into making Hanafuda cards, really traditional Japanese cards, and then they got into making things like toys. In fact, one of the inventor of the Game Boy, one of Gunpei Yokoi's very first inventions was a toy called the Ultra Hand, which was, I guess you could say, it's like it's one of those mechanical arms sort of things, and that was one of his first creations. And then, of course, after Nintendo got into other things, they started making video games like the NES, the Super Nintendo, the Nintendo 64, the Game Boy. That's all, and it leads into what we systems we have today. Things like the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo 3DS. So, so basically, the stream here, we're just I just wanted to have fun and with you guys watching and just talk about like our memories with Nintendo, and maybe I talk a bit about like my personal history of Nintendo, and maybe answer maybe talk a bit about like my thoughts on Nintendo. What are some games I'd like to see come out from them? Not to call you out, Alan. I know that you have. Um, is that Lucas you got on your profile picture? Because I'd be willing to share my thoughts on what I know about Mother 3 at some point in the discussion tonight. So let me just spread the word. Yeah. Alan says yes, it is. Yeah, it is supposed to be Lucas. Do you know much about Mother 3? um, Alan, are you into Earthbound? Do you personally want to see Mother 3 get released in America? I've actually been playing, for people watching, I've been playing quite a bit of Earthbound on my. I actually have both the Wii U version and the 3DS version. It's weird because when I first heard, I believe Earthbound came out first on the Wii U. Of course, it's the Super Nintendo game, but it came out on Wii U first, and I wanted to pick it up, especially since there was a lot of hype building up around Earthbound, and so we got that. But then when I found out that, oh, you can get it on the 3DS, I was like, 3DS, that means I could take it with me. So yeah, I'll go pick it up. So I've been primarily playing the game on my 3DS and using the player's guide that you can get from Nintendo's website. And yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun. And this is coming from a person who doesn't really play that many RPGs. I basically what really got me into playing Earthbound was actually I watched the Angry Video Game Nerd episode on Earthbound and just how deep that James Rolfe went into that game. And I was like, whoa, this might actually be one of the deepest games that I've come across. So that's what really got me into going back to Earthbound and getting myself good at the game. So yeah, still pretty early in the game. I just defeated. Hold on, let me see. Let me get out the name of the enemy so I can be super precise. The Earthbound Guide. I actually have it stored on my books application for iPhone and iPad. Sorry about that. Where is the name? I already beat Frank. Um, already beat Frankenstein. Yeah, the Titanic Ant. That was the last major enemy that I defeated in Earthbound. So, yeah, definitely a lot of fun so far. But I think I'll go into my thoughts on Mother 3 later on tonight. I don't want to spend too much time talking about like my personal history with Nintendo because whenever I do these kind of things where I do like to explain like my personal history with the topics that I talk about out, but at the same time, I don't want to make it sound like I should have a biopic made of this. Universal like should make a movie about my his personal history with Nintendo, and it goes beyond just playing their games too. But yeah, so I'll get to your comment, your excuse me, your comment, Alan, in a second. But in case I didn't explain before, I actually have a whole bunch of Nintendo controllers just sitting beside me. But I do want to talk a bit because as whenever I hear a lot of people talk about their personal history with Nintendo, it's mainly people, and I don't hate them either. I'm just saying a lot of them come from like the NES era. When I hear people, YouTubers like the Review Tech USAs and the Tweeterman 287s, or even like James Rolfe, they all talk about how they all got started with the NES, and I'm quite, and I came along quite like a bit later. Like I was literally born the decade after the NES came out in the States, and as a result, actually, my very first Nintendo console, well, console in general, it's wrapped up in wire, as you can see here. Alan, please feel free to name what was your very first Nintendo system. And everyone else, feel free to chime in. Untangling is not one of my strengths. It's literally been a while since I used this particular controller. It's just that the reason is because this hasn't been working super well because I've had this controller for like literally like I would say 18-ish years, I would say. Just bear with me. This is live, so of course screw ups like this or the goofs. And yeah, This was, yeah, the controller from my very first Nintendo system, the Nintendo GameCube, right over here. I think what basically happened was whenever I would go over to my cousin's place, they were really into Nintendo. They have a Nintendo 64 at their place. And I remember specifically this one time they were playing Smash Melee, and I was like, oh, what's this game with the really nice music? Because the music from the Melee, the main menu and the character select screen, was really catchy and iconic. And I was like, "Whoa, this is interesting." Weirdly enough, the only character I reckon, like Smash Melee, definitely introduced me to many of like Nintendo's most iconic characters. Of course, Mario was there, Link. So it was like, oh, we're all these characters. The only one I recognized off the bat, strangely enough, was actually Pikachu, because I used to actually watch the Pokemon anime when I was a kid. I have a very sort of on-off relationship when when it comes to Pokemon. It's like every once in a while I watch the TV show, or my sis will buy the games. I know that we've got games like Pokemon X, we have Pokemon Sun, we have Pokemon. I was actually just restarting my Pokemon Platinum file. I had Pokemon Pearl. This was actually the very first Pokemon game that we got at our house, Pokemon Leaf Green, and I'll get into that in a second. And so yeah, and so after I saw that, somehow my parents were like, hey, let's get our kids a GameCube, and the very first game that we played was actually Pikmin, and then it just went from there. We didn't get like every single iconic Nintendo GameCube game. There's even some that I'd be very curious to try myself. Like there was Mario Kart for the GameCube. Even some of the mature rated titles like Geist and Eternal Darkness, I'd be very keen to try. But many of the games I got for the GameCube were games like um, Pikmin, Animal Crossing, Smash Brothers, Melee. Of course, we had to get that, and also Super Monkey Ball. Balls 1, 2, and I think the other one was called Super Monkey Ball Adventure. So yeah, it just went from there. Strangely enough, one of the games me and my sis used to play quite a bit, and the one that kind of made me game rage a bit was Over the Hedge for the GameCube. That was actually quite a fun game, even though one of the levels kind of got me super frustrated as a kid. And Alan, you said that your first ever Nintendo console is a Nintendo DSi, and you think it was the 25th anniversary Super Mario Brothers edition, and the first game for it was Mario Kart DS. What color was that DSi, Alan? So yeah, that was definitely a lot of fun. And then my second console, strange enough, and I would say a lot of my interest in Nintendo started because my cousins got into consoles. Like I had a couple cousins who were really into the Game Boy. Um, the two cousins that I just told you about that were really into GameCube and N64. Like I even remember very fairly recently, I went over to their place, and my uncle, their dad, was actually playing Donkey Kong Racing for the N64, which was kind of bizarre for me because I don't really my relatives I don't really see them playing Nintendo games all that much, but that was still kind of interesting, and kind of shameful to say, but at the same time, this was still a really fun console. My first portable system, if you could believe me, was actually not uh, the Game Boy Advance. Kind of surprisingly, I mean, it was because, and I don't feel about this way about it now. I actually just bought a Game Boy Advance SP off of eBay, but at the time, looking at Game Boy Advance games, I was like, what is that like really old looking game? Like like, it's the kind of effect. You know how like when little kids, if you turn on a black and white movie, they'll be like, no, don't turn on black and white movie. They talk weird and it's so old looking. That was the kind of effect that GBA games had on me as a kid. So I was like, I don't want it. And so my very first Nintendo port was actually the original DS. Um, yeah, it was actually the Silver DS. I was seeing my other cousin playing the original DS. I think he had Super Mario 64 DS at the time. And I was so fascinated because it was like the first time I saw a system with a touch screen. Like, the only other time I saw touch screens would be like when you went to the mall and you saw, the clerks using, touch screen computers and that kind of thing. But I was just like, whoa, is this really cool system? I have to get it. And so that's where my interest in the DS started. Some of my favorite games. You mentioned one of them, Alan, Mario Kart DS. That was actually a really big thing back when I was in elementary school. I don't know if it was for you, Alan, but I remember in the fifth grade, a, my teacher would sometimes have these game days where they would bring their like Game Boys and DSs and PSPs, and it's like a good chunk of the kids, myself included, really got into playing Mario Kart DS matches. I sucked at them, to say the least. I would always get last place, and back then I was not good at handling competition, so I would always get really upset when I would lose Mario Kart matches. So yeah, and then from there, I also actually, Alan, if you're still there, this is actually my personal DSi. This is the blue color. It was one of the launch systems. We didn't get this at launch. We actually got this just after I think I finished 7th grade of middle school. I'll actually show you what it looks like when you open it up. And reason we got the DSi, we didn't actually get the DS Lite because at the time I was like, oh, my original DS is working just fine. I don't need to upgrade to the DS Lite. I'm kind of thinking of picking one up just to collect it. But the reason we got a DSi was actually because the hinge design of the original DS was not that great. It was in that sort of compartmentalized. You know how like on the DSi they have that sort of single hinge? Well, the original DS had like I don't know how we describe like a whole bunch of like hinges put together, and as a result, it made the system kind of fragile. So like I remember I once dropped it, and it actually damaged the hinge. And as time went on, the top screen just became kind of loose, and so I took a sort of hiatus from playing DS games. And when the DSi was coming out, and then my sister were like, hey, let's get back into playing Nintendo DS games. And then, yeah, bada bing, here it is, the DSi. And we got this in the blue color because my sis really likes the color blue. So, yeah. DSi actually came at a really... Alan, you're asking me, did you know about the Nintendo and Microsoft relationship? I sort of loosely follow that, like, mainly in terms of the rumors. Like, I know Cuphead and Minecraft came to Switch. I remember there was a rumor a while back. I think that they were saying that there was this rumor going around that, oh, what if Xbox Live came to the Switch? And I think even, let me actually double check that. Like, I think there was a rumor saying that Xbox Live, the streaming service, I think it's called Xbox Game Pass, become the Switch, and so far that's not true. It would be super cool though, because even though I don't have an Xbox in my house, I'm kind of interested in trying out, like Halo 5 or Gears 5, which just came out. So yeah, I also know there was that kind of funny commercial where he sort of indirectly slammed Sony for not having crossplay on PS4 at the time, at least not with other consoles. So I don't know. I'd be down for Xbox Game Pass coming to the Switch. I'm kind of nervous to see what it would do to Xbox One sales, because for me personally, I'm probably the prime example where I could get something like an Xbox One S, but if, let's say, if Xbox Game Pass were to come to the Switch, it would be like, do I need to buy an Xbox One anymore if I could just stream it on the Switch? So, Alan said, like Banjo and Kazooie and Smash Bros. Ultimate. That I know about, and Ori and the Blind Forest coming to Switch soon. The latter part, I didn't really know that much about. Banjo Kazooie, yeah, I definitely heard about that. So, yeah, it does sound like to some sort of level Nintendo and Microsoft are kind of have a sort of mutually friendly relationship. I know that the Xbox head Phil Spencer, like, he's a very, like, at least like when he goes on Twitter, he's very I've heard that he doesn't really like fanboyism, and he's like a very respectful person when it comes to what system you play your games on and that sort of thing. And I think that's a really great attribute for a CEO to have in terms of like a public persona and that sort of thing. So I definitely like that. That sounds pretty nice that they have that sort of relationship going on there. At least as far as we're seeing things like Cuphead and Minecraft coming over to Switch and that sort of thing. So yeah, and the DSi it honestly came around as I hold it upside down at a really kind of weird point in my life because the only time where I could think of were these sort of fanboy wars between um, console fanboys really got kind of crazy in my life was when the DSi came out when I was in middle school because I remember I actually took and the DSi actually kind of got me into photography. I explained this before in another video because I used it to take pictures when I went to go visit Washington D.C. and Canada. I visited British Columbia and Alberta just before the 2010 Olympics. I would really like to go to Montreal and Quebec City someday. But when I went to Washington, it's funny. A lot of my classmates were like, "Put that away." We like basically they were saying, we don't want that kiddie device, around you playing, those Nintendo games. And I think I remember having a conversation with a guy. He's talking about why he thought the PSP was much better. I think he even brought his PSP on the trip. I remember he was playing it when we were about to get on the airplane to go to Washington. So definitely came at a sort of weird point in my life. And I was also really into the sort of console war too. Like it really got to me. I would say around like the elementary and middle school sort of time frame. Excuse me for a second to wipe my nose because I really got into that whole thing where I would look at the sales of the Wii and say, "Wow, look at that! The Wii is selling way more systems than the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3." And thankfully, I'm not like that anymore. But back then, I was like fiercely loyal to Nintendo. And speaking of the Wii, yes, I got the Wii around 2007. Yeah, 2007. I remember my dad actually. He went to Circuit City. This is how far we're going back, and he actually waited out there in line just before opening to get one. So, yeah, we definitely a really fun system. I kind of have with games like Super Mario Galaxy, Wii Sports, Warrior Smooth Moves, which I've said many times in videos, that was always like my family's favorite game to watch us play. I remember even one of my aunts really got into it this one time. She was visiting from Chicago. So it's definitely a lot of fun. And from there, I skipped out on the DSi XL, even though I really want to get the burgundy color of the DSi XL at some point, and went over to the 3DS. And then, funny enough, like the 3DS line of systems, me and my sis, we actually do we have every single version? Well, no, we don't have every single version of the 3DS, like not counting the 2DS systems, but we have the original 3DS, the 3DS XL, and right here is the new 3DS XL. Didn't get the 2DS or the new 2DS XL. Like if somebody were to like give me a new 2DS XL to review, I'd check it out. But since it was just like it's just the new 3DS without the 3D, I was like why would I even bother? So yeah. Um, and then of course from there, got the Wii U here. It was also a sort of like kind of awkward console for me, mainly because we were going for when the Wii U was released. They went through those software droughts where they went for a long time without any new games. I don't think I really got into the Wii U as much as I did until like towards the end of its life cycle because I discovered it had games like Yoshi's Woolly World, which funny enough I actually didn't think I would like Yoshi's Woolly World, but it's actually one of my favorite platforming games to play on the Wii U. But yeah, when the Switch was coming out, which Switch you've seen in many of my videos before, um, I was like, I'll get some games I missed out on for the Wii U. So I got games like New Super Mario Brothers Wii, Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge, which that game is hard. They don't kid when they say Ninja Gaiden games are really hard to play. Um, I'm trying to think. I also have Nintendo Land and Batman Arkham City. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of an awkward console. I mean, I don't personally hate the Wii U myself, but it's kind of an awkward console mainly because I think the gamepad is sort of big to play. I mean, especially when you look at it as a controller, it is quite a bulky thing to hold. But I personally, liked it. Okay. And Alan says, the Wii was my favorite Nintendo home console in my young years. I remember playing many Mario games like New Super Mario Bros. Wii, all the Super Mario Galaxy games, and playing Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Yep, I pretty much have, those games you just talked about right there. Oh my god, me and my sis, we really liked Super Smash Bros. Brawl. We finished the main campaign of the first Super Mario Galaxy. I actually recently just got Super Mario Galaxy 2 using the Wii U's Virtual Console. So, but yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun. Funny enough, I would actually like to see Mario Kart Wii come to. I mean, I don't know if Nintendo will do this because the Wii U is technically discontinued, but I would actually like to see them re-release Mario Kart Wii for the Wii U. Maybe the Switch, but I don't know because the Switch has Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I would like to see them release a Mario Kart 9, by the way. So, yeah, I mean, it was definitely a fun system. I will say, as I got older, I kind of fell into how, as I got, not that my interest in motion games declined, but as I got older and got into, like, more responsibilities, like joining a newspaper and having the job I have, I started to not have as much time as I'd like to play, Wii games, especially the ones where you have to get up and swing the remote and that sort of thing. And I think that's why, as I started getting older, I started leaning more towards the more traditional kind of games where you're just pressing buttons and that sort of thing. Games like Super Mario Odyssey and Doom, for instance. Still excited for Doom Eternal, even though Wolfenstein Youngblood, even though it's a different developer, it kind of has me a little concerned about Doom Eternal because as of recently, Bethesda has been in some really crazy shit with things like Fallout 76. Wolfenstein Youngblood I just didn't think it was that fun of a game. Maybe when that patch comes out for the Switch version, I'll give Wolfenstein Youngblood another chance, but I am kind of concerned about Bethesda nowadays. So, yeah. But yeah, anybody else that's joining the chat, feel free to join the party and, talk about Nintendo. Since we got some time here, I know that, Alan, you mentioned, I asked you for your thoughts on Mother 3, the Earthbound sequel, and you said, I hope to see a true localized version of Mother 3 for Switch, or if it comes out as a special game for Switch online service, if it has a Game Boy Advance collection for the Switch. And yeah, I've actually been researching quite a bit about Mother 3, especially since I started getting back into playing Earthbound. And I know the problem with Mother 3, well, the first thing I will say is I do like how in the making of Mother 3, I feel like I see it as a game that was created without much creative compromise, and I give it a lot of credit for that. And I believe that's why the Mother 3 storyline, like go look up cutscenes. It can be a really dark game at times. That's what allowed it to have such heavy themes, and as cheesy as it sounds, it's one of those games where I look at the story of that game and think, wow, this is a video game story. This is really deep and quite emotional for me, And I know because of that, that's what makes Mother 3 really difficult to have local, especially now that Earthbound has such a really big fan base all around the world. That if they change some things, even like kind of like what Game Explained said, even if they change the slightest thing, like I even think if they did the thing where they didn't change much, they just translate everything into English, and I don't know, maybe change. Yeah, I'm sorry about that hiccup, but yeah, I mean that's the kind of unfortunate thing because I know that I've heard that the people who did the fan translation for Mother 3 basically said, Nintendo, you can take our translation for free, please. And and what I think is going on is because even though like Nintendo, they've teased that the fans really really want Mother 3 to come to America. Reggie did that interview with a GameSpot, even though unfortunately Reggie Fils-Aimé has retired from Nintendo, where he was like, talk to me in like a year from now and we'll see what happens. And I think that's the kind of the tragic thing about Mother 3, it's because even like Nintendo's executives know, at least Nintendo of America, like they seem to like know that yes, we know you guys want this game, but we're afraid of backlash because of things like the people always bring up the Magypsies. There's also things like I remember there's certain scenes in Mother 3 that I think could come off as controversial, like the scene where I don't want to get too spoilery, but there's a major death in the game, and one of the characters you would like instead of like you would think Carapace would think is he gonna cry? So he starts like just like beating like people like up out of rage. I mean, and that sort of thing. And there's also one character, a monkey character named Salsa. Like um if the character facade isn't like too happy with him, like he electrocutes him. And as that went on, I was just like, geez, that's actually kind of a bit triggering to me. And that sort of. I'm not saying that that sort of stuff should be like censored if Mother 3 comes to America, because me personally, I would like to see them just do the thing where they like basically they just maybe take the fan translation and do some polishing up, nothing too significant. But knowing Nintendo, I can't see them doing a thing where they would just take the fan translation, even though it's like really well done from what I've seen. But like knowing just how they work as a company, maybe touching it up a little bit, but not too significantly, and releasing it like that. And as Alan was saying, maybe through the virtual cons, not the virtual consoles, but you know how on Switch, if you're subscribed to Nintendo Switch Online, you can play like NES and Super Nintendo games. So if they were to ever bring um, Mother 3 here, it would probably either it would be through Nintendo releasing a bunch of Game Boy Advance games for the Switch, or if they did the thing where they just released Mother 3 on its own and they, I don't know, just labeled it as one of the arcade classics in the Nintendo Switch eShop and that sort of thing. So it's just kind of tragic because like no matter like how you approach Mother 3 and just think like could they just make no changes and just straight up translate it into English or maybe change a few things? The roadblocks are so significant that like I could understand why Nintendo is like we don't know if it's really going to be worth it. So yeah, so the bottom line is I hope they release it in the States. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they did someday down the line. I don't know if 5-10 years later or that sort of thing, but you know, I don't like to like believe in this idea that it's never ever ever gonna like come to the States. I like to think that maybe someone will come along and think of something that nobody has considered or thought of, and that's how they could release the game in the States. I think I came across this one idea of what if they just released like they released like a polished version that gets rid of the controversial stuff, and then they have like the unrated edition where they don't change too much. And I'm just like, I mean, possibility, yes. The only problem with that though is that would just, I feel like that would just add even more to like the cost of how much it would you know be to localize the game. So yeah, I mean, not that it's a bad idea or anything, but it's just I don't think Nintendo would do that because that would be that would already be quite costly for them to do. So yeah. hopefully I didn't lose the chat. So yeah, once again, feel free to chime in with your comments. Yeah. Um, Alan, you're back again. I hope to see Earthbound and Earthbound Beginnings soon for the Switch Online service, NES, and SNES, and finally Mother 3 in the future. I was honestly kind of surprised because Nintendo just came out with Super Nintendo games for the Switch, and I was honestly kind of shocked to see they didn't include Earthbound. And I would also like to see them bring Earthbound Beginnings to the Switch at some point through the NES library. Might be interested in playing through Earthbound Beginnings again. I'm actually having kind of a tough time with Earthbound Beginnings for some reason. I think me and my sister were saying we're actually finding that game to be quite a bit trickier than Earthbound itself, but I think we can get through it. But I would like to see, the basically the entire Mother trilogy come to Switch at some point. I guess you could say I'm just looking through the Switch's Super Nintendo library, just hoping in vain that Earthbound pops up. Yeah, no, I personally wouldn't mind going through. I mean, I know that's the common complaint of how Nintendo handles Virtual Console, that you got to re-download the game all over again, and yeah, I mean, I guess I should be thankful that I'm not too deep into Earthbound, because I personally wouldn't mind starting over. If I got to a later point in the game, like if I met all four characters, Ness, Jeff, Paula, and Pooh, then I would be like, ugh, gotta start all over. Honestly, would actually like it if Nintendo could do a thing where maybe you could start on one system and pick up where you left off on another. So if they did a thing where, um, I think the furthest I'm in, like if I could take my Earthbound copy for 3DS and just pick up where I left off on the Switch, I think that would be really nice. By the way, thanks for sharing my chat, Alan. Hopefully more coming by. Um, Alan's asking, what did you think of the Nintendo Direct from September 4th? Which I'd have to get around to seeing that. The main takeaway, I believe that was the one where they announced these Super Nintendo games coming to Switch, right? Alan? Yeah, because that was basically the main takeaway I had from that Nintendo Direct, because like when I heard the news, I was like, oh, I got to make a video talking about the news that the Super Nintendo games are coming over. Right. Hi there, Javi. How are you doing? By the way, I saw your tweet. Not to go into too much detail, Javi, but I'm sorry about um your loss. Yeah. Kind of ashamed to say, but I haven't actually even gotten around to playing Smash Ultimate that much because I don't know, like I just find that game to be quite a bit more difficult. Like I have a more difficult time with that game compared to all the other Smash games. So I don't know. Maybe I will look into like the DLC fighters. I do have the Piranha Plant. Would like to see Waluigi come to Smash Ultimate, but I don't know if that's gonna happen. It would be really nice though. So yeah, I'm doing pretty good myself, Javi. We're talking about um, Nintendo here. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry to hear about your cousin, Javi. Do you have personally have So yeah, so I'm really sorry to hear that. So did you want to talk about Nintendo tonight, Javi? Are you a fan of Nintendo and their games? Hmm. Yeah, so Javi, you're saying your mom's brother and your mom used to play NES. Ooh, that's really cool. Are you into playing those games yourself? Yeah. Interesting thing. I mainly look at The interesting thing is that, at least for me, whenever I do get to play like NES games or Super Nintendo games or even N64, I kind of play those games more just out of a way of learning about Nintendo's history and just to get a feel for what games were like back then. It's funny because I started playing. I don't remember what was the very first NES game I played. I just remembered it was a game because in the first Animal Crossing, well, I shouldn't say first Animal Crossing was Animal Forest, but in Animal Crossing for the GameCube, you could actually get NES games within the game. I don't remember which ones I played in particular, but I kind of had that experience of what are these really old games, and I didn't really like get into playing like NES, Super Nintendo, or N64 games until the original Wii, because the original Wii was when they introduced the Virtual Console. Sorry again. And so I downloaded some games like Donkey Kong Super Mario Brothers, even the Japanese Super Mario Brothers 2, which is notoriously hard. I actually really like playing Excite Bike and the original Pac-Man for NES. As far as Super Nintendo games go, I know that me and my sis tried to play the of the Legend of the Mystical Ninja. I played Contra 3. I didn't really get into playing Contra all that much. But I remember my initial impression with playing the NES and Super Nintendo games is I actually had quite a hard time with those games because I wasn't used to playing, games in like in a super two-dimensional side-scrolling sort of way. So even to this day, it can be kind of tricky for me, but I've made progress. I've gotten better at playing games like Super Mario Brothers. Never really gotten that good at playing Donkey Kong. But for me, it's nice to get a piece of playing. Hey, this is what playing Nintendo games was like in the '80s. The NES basically single-handedly brought back the American video game market because the NES came out um, around the time of the American video game crash. It's done through kind of questionable ways with Nintendo's licensing policies, and but yeah, people really like playing NES games back in the day. Today, a lot of those games, a lot of the really iconic games for the NES are considered classics and still loved even to this day. And I really hope that the younger generation, you know, especially kids that kids. I mean, Jesus Christ, it's 2019, and somebody that's born in the year 2000 is now probably 18 or 19 years old. But I hope that future generations also get to dip their toe into playing NES games once, just to get an idea of where a lot of these companies basically got their start. I'll go one at a time. Alan is asking. I remember seeing Japanese executive Wii channels in my early days of Nintendo, like a food delivery channel that delivers food directly from your Wii, and a me-related channel about Japanese products. I don't know too much about the Japanese exclusive Wii channels. I've heard about the food delivery channel before. Sounds kind of interesting. Would be kind of interesting if like I could order or food from like my local. We order takeout a lot from this Italian restaurant and this Vietnamese restaurant. It would be kind of interesting if we could bring up one of those places and order like spaghetti or a bowl of pho using um, the Wii. Yeah. Um, so I don't know too much. I know there's actually quite a few games that only got released in Japan that I think that got missed out on that didn't get released in America for the Wii, like Disaster Day of Crisis. Which Disaster Day of Crisis, I believe, also it basically made it. I made it to. I know it came out in Europe because I saw the European trailer for that game, but it didn't get released in the States. And then there was also oh I'm gonna but I think I'm gonna butcher. I might butcher this name. There's also this hack and slash game called. Let me look it up just so I know I'm pronouncing it right. Because I used to look up this game quite a bit and watch my gameplay. Uh, I think it's pronounced Zangeki no Ragen Lava or something. In which it's basically like think Nintendo's bloody version of Dynasty Warriors. Like it's a hack and slash game where you're slashing in enemies and there's a lot of blood, which is a little surprising for a Nintendo game. But yeah, I'm just like I don't know. I guess the dumb 12-year-old in me is like, why isn't that game released in America? So yeah, Javi is asking what made you get into Nintendo. What got me into Nintendo, I think, was my cousin. Was that my parents? They saw that a lot of my cousins were getting into playing Nintendo games. Like I had a couple of cousins that were into Game Boy, and a couple others that were into playing GameCube. And then my parents, they got me a GameCube, and my first game technically was an NFL game, but I was never a football fan. The first real game that I really got into on the GameCube was Pikmin. And down the road, I also got other games like Animal Crossing and Super Smash Bros. Melee, which specifically remember my cousins were really into playing Super Smash Brothers Melee. So yeah, that was how I got into Nintendo and how I got introduced to the characters. After I saw my cousins play Smash Melee, I recognized Pikachu because I used to watch the Pokemon anime, and then I was like, wait, that Mario character, that Link character, aren't they from Smash? They have their own games? What? And so that was basically where my interest in Nintendo started, hobby. So yeah, it was basically I don't have every single Nintendo system at my house. Like I don't have the Game Boy Advance. I didn't get into Game Boy as a kid, and I don't have the Nintendo DS Lite. But I have systems like the GameCube, the DSi, the Wii U, and basically every mainline Nintendo system onwards. And Hobby's asking, are you excited for Luigi's Mansion 3? I'm curious about Luigi's Mansion 3. Like, if somebody. I don't even just want to say if it was just like a Christmas present I'd played, because it's just the kind of thing where I would consider picking it up. But then again, there's also quite a few other Switch games that me and my sis are saving up for. Like, I really wanted to get Yoshi's Crafted World, which is still really expensive. And my sis is really hyped for it. She's hyped for Link's Awakening, Pokemon Sword and Shield. I don't know which of the two that she wants, and I'm personally excited for um, Doom Eternal. I'm kind of cautious about that game, but yeah. So I'm I'm curious about Luigi's Mansion 3. I do have Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, and we also have Luigi's Mansion for the GameCube. Fortunately, though, we never got to finish. I know that we're actually stuck in Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, and in the first Luigi's Mansion, I think we got to the baby character Chauncey, that really freaky baby that screams a lot. But that was where we last left off on Luigi's Mansion for the GameCube. So yeah, what to both well, pretty much everybody in my audience, what Switch games or what upcoming games are you excited for? So, but yeah, speaking of which, Alan, the Wii channels. It's funny enough, my family had a really good time with the Wii channels that did come to the States. Like, I remember we would always try to get my parents involved in the Everybody Votes channel and also Check Me Out channel. Me and my sis would be designing Mii's. Like, I specifically remember we designed, like, a Weather Woman, but we also got into other competitions for the Check Me Out channel, which I believe the Check Me Out channel is also called the Mii Contest channel in Europe. In case for people who are wondering what the Check Me Out channel is. Javi's asking, which Nintendo franchises would you like to see back on the Switch? Um, I would like to see. I was talking with Alan about this earlier. That I would like to see the Earthbound trilogy come to Switch. Earthbound Beginnings, Earthbound, and Mother 3. Even though the odds of Mother 3 coming are kind of slim, I would actually also like to see. Let's see. Animal Crossing is coming to Switch next year. Another game I'm really hyped about. Um, let's see. I also want to see Mario Golf because I actually surprisingly really like Mario Golf. This is more of a selfish answer, but I'd like to see maybe Nintendo find some way to bring, like maybe bring Pilot Wings to the Switch. Oh my god, I would really love to see them bring like Excite Truck to the Switch or Kirby's Air Ride. Have you ever played that game for the Nintendo GameCube? I'm surprised that particular Kirby game has never gotten a sequel. And what other games? I would like. I mean, the fanboy me is kind of like, what if Nintendo brought like Wii Sports to the Switch, and they did the thing where like you use the Joy Cons to go bowling or to play tennis or baseball or basketball, um, because Wii Sports Resort had a basketball game, or even like one of the most relaxing things I like doing in both Pilot Wings Resort and Wii Sports Resort is actually just flying the plane in both games. So I don't know what Nintendo would call it. I don't think they would call it like Switch Sports or that sort of thing. That sounds like a really goofy name, but I'd be very curious to see that. I'm even kind of like ticked that they didn't put Mii's in Ring Fit Adventure as far as I know. But if anything, I'm just like, hey, Nintendo's coming out with Ring Fit Adventure, so maybe they'll bring like their version of Wii Sports over to the Switch someday. So Alan says you're excited for Luigi's Mansion 3, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games for Switch. Um, I have to think about that. The only Mario and Sonic Olympic game that I really got into was for the Beijing Olympics. I'm not really into, even though I do watch every single Olympics, but in terms of like winter sport video games, I don't usually play. I played the demo of the London 2012 version of Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, and I thought it was kind of tricky. But I don't know. Maybe I'll give the upcoming Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, the one that's coming for the Tokyo Olympics, a shot and see how that goes. Because I did have a really fun time playing the Mario and Sonic the Olympic Games for the Beijing Olympics. It's just that I think with the London version, I think they kind of strayed a little too far. I kind of wish they stuck to just having more traditional controls. So yeah, anybody else, feel free to chime in and talk about your thoughts on Nintendo, as everybody's welcome to talk tonight. Because we're just here to basically just have fun and have a good time. It's funny. I know I mentioned earlier that I don't have. I've honestly never owned a Game Boy Advance, and yet I have several Game Boy games like Pokemon, Leaf Green. I've also got Avatar: The Burning Earth, and one of the Game Boy Advance video games that had a bunch of Cartoon Network episodes. I was able to play those games through the original Nintendo DS because the original Nintendo DS have has a Game Boy Advance slot. Alan, you're saying you're going off to sleep now. Have a good night. Thanks for coming by. It was definitely really fun talking to you. And once again, hoping that the Earthbound trilogy comes to Switch one of these days. So yeah. But since my original DS broke, that was why I actually spent the money to get a Game Boy Advance SP, and I got mine in the red color because red's my favorite color. And I got several games, including the system itself. The listing on eBay said it comes with Mario Kart, a Tony Hawk game, and what was the other one? I think a Sonic game. But I also picked up Yoshi Topsy Turvy, the one where you actually have to move the Game Boy Advance around to play, and also Tetris for the original Game Boy because I actually had the original Game Boy Tetris when that came out for 3DS, and I actually got super hooked into playing that game. Tetris, as Tetris has always been, is a really addictive game to play. So it's definitely a lot of fun. So yeah, just having a good time. Once again, anybody watching, please feel free to, chat with us. This is basically, we're just here to have fun. We're celebrating Nintendo's anniversary a day late, admittedly, but we're celebrating it, it just by talking about our favorite memories with Nintendo. Yep, I'm back once again. Not really sure what's going on. It's because I'm, kind of far from my router. Just been having a couple connection issues, but otherwise it's been going fine. Sorry about the hiccups. I can't think of what else to say. I mean, once again, feel free to leave a comment in the chat. We've just been having a lot of fun tonight talking about Nintendo and the impact it's had on us. So everybody's still watching. In terms of, let's think. Maybe in terms of like other Nintendo systems, I'd consider collecting. I've honestly always wanted to get a Virtual Boy, even though I know that Virtual Boy games, they look really bad. They're all in like red and black, and they give people headaches. But at the same time, I'm just kind of curious to try one myself and be like, oh, is it as bad as people? It's not that I doubt, it's as bad as people will say it is, but I'm kind of curious to play some of the games that were for the Virtual Boy. Like I would consider trying out things like Mario's Tennis, Tellero Boxer. There was like a space shooter for it. I can't remember the name. Let me try looking it up. Yeah, Vertical Force. And what are some others that I would consider? The DS Lite, only because I kind of feel like I missed out on getting it. Because it's funny, I think when the DS Lite came out, it was like, you know, most of my classmates that had a DS basically had the DS Lite. I'm guessing a lot of them moved up to it from the original system because the DS Lite, was a lot slimmer. It had a much cleaner design compared to the original DS. And I'll also pick up you consider getting the DSi XL mainly because I really like the I like the burgundy colored that Nintendo made for the DSi XL. I think it's called wine red in other countries. You know? And speaking of which, yeah, of the DSi, I can't believe I almost forgot to talk about this. Another game that me and my sister really got into as kids, but actually, Flipnote Studio, and we definitely remember going on Flipnote Hatena, which was basically like the YouTube for the flip notes, which were these very simple animations done in the application. And yeah, we definitely remember watching things like there was this person who made the stupid Mario Brothers, which is kind of a this sort of cartoon with the Nintendo characters and the Mario characters really doing dumb things. There was also, I don't know if I want to say any of these names out there. There was also the Stupid Finger, where people weirdos were there were literally these characters that looked like fingers, and they would walk around and do some really crazy things together. In fact, that was one of their names. Literally, one was named Crazy. But yeah, definitely had good times. I'm kind of selfishly. I mean, going back to the previous question of what Nintendo franchises would I like to see come to Switch, the one that Javi asked earlier, I'd be curious to see what Nintendo could do if they released like a Flipnote Studio for the Switch, but that might be kind of hard to do since the Switch doesn't, it doesn't come with a stylus out of the box like what the DSi did. So for something like that, you'd probably have to pick up. So I believe you can get styluses for the Switch, but it's just the kind of thing where you're just gonna have to go buy like a capacitive stylus because out of the box the Switch doesn't use one. Excuse me. And if possible, maybe I will get myself like the original Game Boy Advance and the Game Boy Micro one of these days. The main reason I wanted to start off with the SP was because the SP plays Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance games, but it also has the frontlit screen. And there's kind of trade offs with like, I mean, I'm sure all the Game Boy Advances. I mean, even I played the Game Boy Advance, especially the SP and the original one before are good systems, but there's kind of trade offs depending on where you go. Like the original Game Boy Advance doesn't have a backlit screen, the SP doesn't have a headphone jack, and the Game Boy Micro doesn't play original Game Boy games or Game Boy Color. It just plays Game Boy Advance games. So the SP was kind of the best compromise of the three. It'd be kind of funny to redecorate my room to make it look like there's a trophy room in Super Smash Brothers Melee where they have like basically every Nintendo system at the time. Like I remember that room had like the NES and the Super Nintendo and a whole bunch of Game Boys in that room. I don't think they had the Virtual Boy though. And I'm just like looking at the cubby holes and thinking, oh, what? Oh, wait, it does have the Virtual Boy. Oh, okay. Didn't see it in my copy. Maybe I have to still unlock some things in my copy of Smash Brothers Melee, but okay. Let me see though, because those look like they're from the Japanese version because they have the Famicom in the background. So I don't know if it's like a thing where I mean, maybe somebody could let me know in the description if the Virtual Boy is in the US version of Smash. Yeah, I don't know. I'm looking at this image from the Smash Wiki, and I don't see the Virtual Boy in the US version. I always wondered, where would you put the Switch, the original Wii, and the Wii U? Because those were the systems that came out after the GameCube. So I'm gonna keep this going until 10 because I have to stop at 10 because I have work tomorrow. But yeah, feel free. Don't be shy. Let me know your thoughts on your memories of Nintendo, and leave all those thoughts in the live chat. I'd love to talk with you before the stream ends. In terms of other videos I'm thinking of doing, I would consider doing a trailer reaction for Frozen 2. I know that they just had that new trailer come out for Good Morning America. It's actually been a while since I've done a trailer reaction, and I hope it goes better nowadays because now that I'm doing basically all my OBS streaming through Windows 10 as opposed to Mac OS, it should run a lot smoother. At least on my computer, that's the case. No. Let me actually check. I think I saw a tweet from Cartoon Network saying you can now watch a lot of the Apple and Onion episodes, which is a show I talked about a while back. I've seen a couple episodes of Apple and Onion. I think it's a pretty entertaining show, but I've never done a video like discussing some of the episodes that I've seen. So maybe I'll consider doing that. Like maybe doing a thing where I talk about not all the episodes that you can watch on Cartoon Network app because then that would be a really really long review. But maybe something like the first three. Although I don't want to call it a first impressions video because that would technically not be my first impression of Apple and Onion. I said a while ago I would also do um, I would also check out the Phineas and Ferb effects since me and Gabby promised to a while ago from now, which I've catched up. I watched several episodes of Phineas and Ferb. I mean, I've seen the show before, but I wanted to just to kind of refresh my memory, and I also want to get through some episodes of Milo Murphy's Law. I'm actually kind of looking through all the episodes of Amphibia on the iTunes Store, and I know that's another show I really need to catch up on. I do want to see finish up Amphibia before Owl House comes out. I heard it gets really epic, like something almost like basically kind of like what happens to Gravity Falls and Star. And yeah, once again, feel free to leave your thoughts on your memories of Nintendo, what you like, what you've not liked from them. I'm honestly open to pretty much talking about anything when it comes to Nintendo. Especially talking critically about them. Even though I consider myself a Nintendo fan, I'll be the first to admit, nobody's perfect and that sort of thing. Yeah. Once again, the stream went down for a second. Sorry about that. Getting close to the end anyway, so yeah. But once again, any final thoughts, please put them in the chat right now if you'd like me to answer them on the spot. And somebody is kind of spoiling the Frozen 2 trailer on Twitter. Oh, oh wow! It's actually. Oh, I just noticed on my phone some questions. I have to reload the page. Oh my god! What the like? What like when it disconnected? Did it forget to refresh? Sorry about that. I noticed that Caitlin. Hi there. Um, and Hobby. Um, okay, so Caitlin, you got Flipnotes Studio 3D. Blah ha ha ha. If you're still there, Caitlin, let me just show you something. Want to know what I have? As soon as my 3DS turns on and I get the exposure to work, I Flipnotes 3D as well. So yeah, I actually don't use it that much. Surprisingly, it's kind of weird because me and my sis were really big fans of the original Flipnote Studio for the DSi. But I don't know. I guess we just got too busy using Photoshop and Premiere. Holly's asking me, what's the worst Nintendo game I've ever played? I'm trying to think, what is the worst Nintendo game I've ever played? It's really. I'm not sure. I would have to get back to you on that one, Javi, because I'm not sure what I would pick. It's not that I've never played a bad Nintendo game. Like there's some that I'd play over others, but I can't. I'm not sure if I can name one, or I'm just like I know from the start that oh yeah, that's the one that I absolutely hate and I can't stand. And maybe I just have to keep that in mind. Next time if the internet goes down and that I'd have to try refreshing the page and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, Caitlin, don't be ashamed. Don't There's no shame, in coming at this point. Just as long as we've got some things to talk about. I'll be able to stick around. So I'll keep the stream going for a few more minutes. I know I said I was going to end it, but I want to give a chance for some more people to respond. Yeah, I really have to think about that. Um, Javi asked me, "Do you prefer Mario or Zelda?" Sorry to say this, Zelda fans, but I'm much more of a Mario fan. It's not that I hate Zelda or anything, Hobby. It's just that I'm really dumb when I play Zelda because I'm one of those people where whenever I play Zelda, I always need somebody to kind of like hold my hand and show me how to do things like solving the puzzles and taking on those really difficult boss fights. I know that when I played Breath of the Wild, my sis had to help me beat the first boss in that game, the first boss that I defeated. So it's more of a personal preference sort of thing because I'm much more of a platforming sort of gamer as opposed to like a puzzle slash RPG gamer, especially the kind of game Zelda is. I guess I'm just too stupid to sort of figure out those games on my own. And speaking of Zelda, I actually do have a copy. I mean, Link to the Past is now available for Switch Online, but I do have a copy of Link to the Past for the Game Boy Advance, and it also came with that game, Legend of Zelda: Four Swords, which in that Game Boy version you literally actually needed to have like multiple friends with multiple Game Boy Advances to play. So we were never able to play that. Not until they came out with they made a GameCube. I think it was a GameCube spin-off of Four Swords, and they made one for the DSi. As far as I can remember, do you think Super Mario Sunshine is a good game, or just aged badly in general? I actually haven't played, surprisingly, Super Mario Sunshine. I would like to. I know that my sister has at like a friend's house, but unfortunately, I didn't get to play Mario Sunshine. So sorry, Avi. I don't have an answer for that. Other than I would like to try playing it for myself. I mean, do fans consider it? Do fans say that the game hasn't aged well? Is that why you're asking? Or what do you personally think? I mean, for me, I didn't really get into the 3D platforming Mario games until Super Mario Galaxy, and then from there, I played Super Mario 3D Land, Super Mario 3D World, Super Mario Odyssey, which I finished the main story of that game. I just got Galaxy 2. Um, Hobby says it has mixed rep when it came back out back in 2002. Okay, I see what you mean, but I haven't played it for myself. Maybe I'll pick it up because I do have. I'll have to pull my GameCube and Wii out of storage to play it, but maybe I'll play it one of these days. All right, so Hobby, you're taking off. All right, good night to you. It was really nice talking Nintendo with you. I'll see you later. I think I'm going to end it off here for the people watching. So once again, thank you for joining the stream. It was definitely a lot of fun. Really happy with the turnout, and I just really enjoy talking about Nintendo with you. So hopefully I'll have more videos coming back soon. And yeah, I'm really gonna have to get off soon because I have to work tomorrow morning really early. So until next time, this has been Blood Moon Bobby, and thank you all for watching.